This is the Building a Clear Authentic Brand podcast, and I'm your host, Amy Dardis. And today we have Mike Konrad joining us. Mike Konrad is the founder and CEO of Aqueous Technologies, a company he launched in 1992 that has become a leader in post-reflow cleaning and reliability solutions for the electronics manufacturing industry. But he's also the host of two successful podcasts, Reliability Matters, which focuses on electronics reliability, and then also The Reluctant Entrepreneur, where he explores the journeys of other business founders. Mike, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for inviting me, Amy. I'm so happy to be on the show. I've watched several of your episodes and I like what you do. So I'm happy to be part of it.
Well, I'm excited to dive into this conversation. So, how did you get into being an entrepreneur in the first place?
I lost a bet. It feels like I lost a bet, but not really. I'll try and make this short, or we can do 10 episodes on it. Either way. I was in London with my family, 40 plus years ago. And this would have been 1985. And the flight coming home from London was canceled. And it was canceled for 3 days. And we were flying this charter airline. My wife and I we were young. We had our small baby. We didn't have any money. So we flew this charter airline in World Airways, long gone. And the engine broke. So they only had one more plane. So they had to bring in the engine on the next flight over and then put it on the aircraft so we could fly home. And that process took a few days. And they kept us at the terminal, at the gate for 3 days. They put us in a hotel at night and drug us back in the morning because they wanted everyone to be ready the moment the engine was fixed, right? They didn't want to round up the crew. So they had us all hanging there. So a few days of conversation, meeting strangers. My wife actually talked to an older couple who were about to start a new business within the electronics manufacturing space, which I was not part of. And they asked, what does your husband do for a living? They go, he's a sales guy. He sells stuff. And they said, well, we're looking, our first employee when we start this company is, we're going to need a salesperson. And she goes, I'll let my husband know. I didn't think much of it. 6 months later or so, I had a bad day at the office. I was just pissed off and said to my wife, do you still have the number of that guy you met at the airport? I think I'm going to call him. So I did. He flew me down. I was in Northern California. He was in Southern California. So he flew me down, had an interview, got hired, and moved the family to Southern California. And that's now me in the electronics assembly space. And then there was a very specific issue that was going on within the electronic assembly space. So it was actually two issues that were colliding. One issue was the product that they had developed, that they started the business to sell, was soon going to become obsolete. Without going down too deep into any rabbit holes, they created this technology that was pretty novel, but other things were happening within our industry that would make that novel technology obsolete within a few years. And I didn't know anything about it, so I didn't recognize that when I looked at starting with the company. So once I realized that, I'm like, oh my God, I don't think this is going to last. And at the same time, completely different issue was occurring where a certain chemical was going to be banned within several years worldwide. And our industry, for a very specific process, a cleaning process, cleaning circuit boards, as part of the manufacturing process, that chemical, which was widely used in the cleaning process, was going to go away. And the industry was freaking out because no other chemical worked anywhere near as well. And that created a light bulb moment in my head. And I'll skip some parts, but basically I pitched them on the idea that we should be doing this. And they did for a while, but they didn't really embrace the ideas that I had. And I got frustrated because I thought it was a really good idea. We changed the paradigm. Instead of coming up with a new chemical, we came up with a process that doesn't use that chemical at all, or any chemical like it. Very green process that happened to work well. And they weren't interested in that idea. So I did like what any mature, now 32-year-old at the time would do. I had a tantrum. I picked up my glove and my bat and went home and complained to anyone who would listen how unfair life was. And my wife said to me, she goes, well, Mike, is that a good idea? I said, I think it's a great idea. She goes, then why are you trying to give it away to your employer? Why don't you just do it yourself? And Amy, I had 10 toes hanging over the cliff anyway, and that was just a little gentle, loving nudge. And little did she realize what was going to turn into that, what the outcome would be and how disruptive it would be to our life. But that was the genesis of it. So I always refer to myself as a reluctant entrepreneur because no part of me wanted to start a business. I wanted to introduce this technology to the world, to the manufacturing world. And the only way to do it was just to do it myself. No one else would do it. So I thought, okay, I'll do it. And how hard could it be, Amy? I got the tech now. Business, I'll figure it out. I'm a smart guy. Wow, that was a rude awakening. But that's the genesis. That's a very long answer to your very short question.
So you first had to make sure you had the process working, but then you also had to figure out how to build a business around it and get it out in the industry and introduce everyone to something brand new. How on earth did you go about doing that?
Yeah, I don't think I realized the enormity of the challenge that was in front of me. The technology that I had created was novel and easily ridiculed. It was almost too simple. It's like a solution was right there in the face. And so the industry didn't take it too seriously. The only reason we sold some equipment in the early days is because there was no choice. The other chemical was going away or it was already gone, and they needed something that would work. So a lot of our early customers said, okay, you know what? We'll just buy one of these silly little machines and then we'll figure out what the real solution would be. And so we kind of sold in spite of ourselves in the early days. And now, 34 years later, now, we managed over time to change the mindset to where our product is a temporary stopgap. It's a little silly, kind of almost embarrassing to use because it's too simple to, it's the status quo. It's now conventional wisdom to use our technology. And now many other companies have adopted similar technologies and now we're mainstream. But that was a journey. It was a very long journey that I didn't expect because in my mind, it was fully mainstream and in the industry's mind, it wasn't. So that was part of our journey and our marketing early marketing day didn't approach the fact that people thought we were unconventional. Our newer marketing strategies, we caught on to that fact and we can go down all those subjects as you drive this bus here.
When you started your business then, how did you get it out into the marketplace? Because at the time, the internet was not at all what it is today.
No, there was no internet, Amy. This was like life before the internet, right? Which seems for most of your viewers and listeners like, what? Right? Did you carve things in caves, with chalk and chisels? Almost. Yeah, this was 1992 that I started the company and the internet. I think the early examples of the internet were out then, but it was mostly government agencies and universities that had access to it. It wasn't public then. We didn't develop our first website and get email until 1996. So we had 4 years of Stone Age, relatively speaking, Stone Age marketing. So the only way we could be known was to run ads. Well, first run press releases because press releases are free. And there were a lot of trade magazines back then, fewer today, but there were a lot of print trade magazines. So we would run press releases. And then eventually we scrounged up enough money to run some ads. And the ads were expensive. The ads, back in those days, you can get a black and white ad or a color ad. Color was more expensive. And a full page color ad in one of our trade magazines. I'm not talking about People magazine or, Life magazine. I'm talking about a trade magazine. And one issue was about $6,000. And that might as well have been $6 million. We couldn't afford that, but we managed to make a deal with them, promising that we'd advertise a whole lot more if they can just cut us a deal the first time. And we ran some of those, and then we exhibited in trade shows. And back then, you had to exhibit in a trade show because people came to you. It's the only time people were coming to you. And so we did as many shows as we could. At one point in time, we were doing 13 shows a year. And yeah, it was the enormity in time and energy and money was crazy for the return. But we had to do it. We had to just push all the energy into getting that flywheel turning. At one point, we totally radically changed the marketing strategy. But in those days, it was all look at us, look at us, look at us. And trying to convince the world we were, all that in a bag of chips, and that we were the mainstream, and trying to Jedi mind trick them. These are not the droids you're looking for. It's like, no, ours is the conventional technology, and we did it through pretty braggadocious, chest-thumping, obnoxious, borderline sleazy advertising. We were everywhere. We were loud, and it was awful. Looking back, it was quite cringeworthy.
So what shifted your marketing, and what did you shift to?
I'll tell you that, there's not too many things in life where the genesis of a pivotal decision, right? You know the moment, the second. We're doing a lot of trade shows, as I mentioned, and every year we would try and trump ourselves. We would try and do something more outlandish than the year before. We were known for that. And what I mean outlandish is, we had our equipment in the booth, but we also had magicians and video games. One year we filled the booth with surfboards, trying to kind of bring in surfing and water and control and, cleaning all in one. And the last major show we did, this was many years ago now, we rented a waterfall. The waterfall was 30 feet wide, 15 feet tall. And instead of dropping sheets of water from the sky, the top of the waterfall had thousands of little nozzles, and the nozzles were controlled by a computer. And that resulted in images and words falling from the sky. It was mesmerizing, Amy. It was like, my God. And we dyed the water with a fluorescent green dye, and we had black lights at the top. So this brilliantly green, fluorescent green words of our brand, our logo, all these things, our equipment name, all falling from the sky. It was absolutely amazing. And it was like $70,000 to rent that for 3 days. It's a horrible investment. But the morning the show opened, someone came in to the booth and said that, oh my God, this is the most amazing booth I've ever seen. I can't stop looking at it. And I'm just like, good job, Mike. Good job, Mike. Yeah. I'm like, okay, this is going to be a great show. That's exactly what we were after. Score. And then he said, is that okay? Can I have your permission to take a picture of the booth? I got to share this with my team. I'm like, yeah, 100%. Yeah, please. And I'm feeling proud. I'm feeling like, oh my God, we made the right decision. And then he noticed our equipment in front of the waterfall was on wheels. And he says, Mike, would it be okay if you just roll your equipment out of the way so I can get a better picture of the waterfall? Right? I refer to the business gods metaphorically, right? Because someone up there has a sense of humor when it comes to business. And there's times when the business gods give you subtle hints, little nudges. And then there's times they hit you in the face with a 2x4.
Yeah.
That was my 2x4 moment. That was it. And I remember in my head thinking, what the hell are we doing with $70,000 waterfalls in our booth? We don't sell waterfalls. We have nothing to do with waterfalls. It's just, we were high-tech carnies, high-tech carnival barkers. That's all we were. And at that moment, I made the decision, we're done. We canceled the rest of the trade show contracts for the year, and we canceled every ad that we had scheduled to go out. Cold turkey. Just, we're done. Right? All of a sudden, I was sick of the sound of our own voice. And I said, there's got to be a better way. A couple years before that, my mentor said something to me, and I thought she was crazy. She said, Mike, if you want to sell more product, stop talking about your product. And I'm thinking, in what universe does that make sense, Amy? We sell products. Of course we're going to talk about our products. What? Okay, fine. That's just nuts. I'm not even going to accept that. That moment, that conversation came back in my head. I'm like, okay, I know what she means. I just wasn't ready to hear it. Now I'm ready to hear it. 2x4 in the face. So we switched to education. We no longer talk about our product. To this day, we no longer talk about our products. We haven't run an ad in, 12, 15 years. We attend one show a year now, not 13. And it's very modest. There are no magicians, there are no waterfalls, there's no surfboards. It's just all, business meetings with customers. And we switched to education, and we switched to this concept I like to call conscious marketing. And I'm guilty of creating phrases that turned out they're already created. Other people called it conscious marketing. So I did not invent that term, but I use that term. And that's where we stop talking about us and we start talking about them being our customers. What are the issues they have? What are the problems they're trying to solve? What are the best practice mitigation techniques to resolve those problems? Not us, just best practice. And we started switching. I would still go to trade shows. I still went to 13, 14, 15 trade shows a year, but instead of exhibiting downstairs on the expo floor, I was upstairs in the conference area, giving lectures, giving papers, presentations, writing technical articles for journals and trade magazines, white papers. We started doing monthly webinars, Tech Tuesday webinars every Tuesday, once a month. Non-commercial, best practice, problem solution. I started a podcast called Reliability Matters, which only deals with the reliability of electronic assemblies, which our company contributes to. So we started creating value, and we started being looked at as an authority in our space. Nothing an ad can do for you. No amount of advertising can make you an authority. You have to earn it. And we put the time in, we put the energy in, and we earned kind of authority status, which is not something we claim. We are given that by the industry. And once you are recognized as an authority, you become, and I hate this word because it's been hijacked by other people, but you become an influencer. Not a TikTok twerking Kim Kardashian style influencer. No disrespect to Kim, but not a celebrity based influencer, but an authority based influencer. And one thing I discovered is educated people make educated choices. And when we did that, Amy, everything changed. Not only did we gain authority and become more of an influence to our industry, we started attracting an entirely different type of customer. Mm-hmm. When we were obnoxious and braggadocious and chest thumping, we attracted people who were attracted to that, not necessarily the healthiest business relationship, extremely transactional. And when we switched to this conscious marketing approach, where we led with value, we started attracting customers who appreciated that approach. And our sales became more relational than transactional. Changed our world. And we've been doing that now for 12, 15 years. And it did not only negatively impact sales or have no impact on sales. Our sales soared, and the quality of our clients soared as well. And I never saw that coming. I did not expect that was going to be, icing on the cake. I was just tired of the noise we were making. And, I don't think I had enough insight to realize all the benefits we were going to get from this change in mentality.
Yeah.
But they came.
When you were leading up to this grand moment of this amazing green waterfall, every year as you felt the need to create something more and more and more outlandish, did you have any kind of awareness or nagging feeling or pressure regarding that? Or two, did you have people in your life looking at you being like, Mike, what are we doing? Do we really need a $70,000 waterfall?
I wish I had, and maybe I did, but I wasn't listening. I was so consumed with us, with me, with the image that we were creating, with the supposed accolades we were receiving, like, oh my God, we can't wait to see your booth next year to see what outrageous thing you're going to do. How are you going to beat last year? You'll never beat last year. I was in competition with myself. And when you're in competition with yourself, you don't really hear a lot of outside voices. Looking back, I'm absolutely convinced. They're like, he's crazy. I can't believe how much money he's pouring into there, but I was in the zone. I was in there and I was so deep. I don't think I could hear these outside voices. And when my mentor said to me, Mike, if you want to sell more products, just stop talking about your products. She saw it. But instead of attacking what we were doing, because she knew that wasn't going to go well, she dropped the seed in my head.
So it could come back.
Yeah. And most of the really pivotable major things I've learned to change in my company for the better started with a little seed that I didn't take seriously. I didn't know what to do with it. And one thing my mentor taught me, which is probably the most valuable of all of the lessons, is if you hear something that sounds crazy, I would just reject it and try never to think about it again. And she convinced me to consider the possibilities. Okay, that sounds nuts. Don't talk about my product. Okay, well, I don't have a place to put that right now, so I'm just going to put it on my consider the possibility shelf in my head. Rather than reject it, just think about that. Bring it off the shelf once in a while. Look at it and see if in context it makes more sense. And one thing about, again, I mean this metaphorically, but one thing about the business guides is they will start reducing your options as time goes by. They want you to go here, and I don't want to go there. So what do? They start building roadblocks on the other side. They start closing some doors. They start leaving certain doors open, and your options get more limited and more limited and more limited until you have what I like to call the burning building moment. And this is an awful metaphor, but you're standing on the window ledge of a high-rise building and the building's on fire. If you stay, no chance of survival. If you jump, there is almost no chance of survival. But you never know, Amy. This could be a lucky day. There could be a flatbed truck filled with pillows that happens to drive by right at the moment of impact. So, and unfortunately and tragically, we've seen on the news people jumping out of windows. And so I would be standing on the window ledge, metaphorically, building on fire. And some of the best decisions I made on that window ledge. And the decision was just jump, because I didn't really have any other choice. And I survived every jump. But that's kind of the mindset. When I had that hit in the face with the 2x4 moment at the trade show, that was the building on fire. And the alternative looked amazing as opposed to scary. There was no choice. I guess that's the greater point I'm making, is a lot of the major decisions I made when there was no other choice. I can't even take credit for it. It's not like I've made a thoughtful, weighed the options, weighed the pros, did a SWOT analysis, do all the things you're supposed to do. No, I just did it because the building was on fire. I had no choice. Now I can learn things. It takes a while, but I'm a slow but sure learner. And what I've learned now is to trust the process. Why wait for the building to be on fire before I jump? Let's save all the drama, right? Let's just, the moment I hear something that sounds a little nutty, I am now attracted to that idea. Now, it doesn't mean I embrace it right away, but now I try and understand, okay, why did I hear that? What am I not seeing? Why is this sounding crazy? And I will accelerate the process so I don't wait for the fire to jump. And
when you sorry, I just wanted before you.
I'm going on. I'm rambling now. So
before you drove this train in a different direction, when you switched to this new method of marketing and you had that defining, clear moment, was it kind of a right away shift in your mind, or did you have some wrestling to kind of get rid of these old marketing mindsets in order to fully embrace and believe this new way?
Yeah, good question. It was instant, Amy, and only because
Okay.
we had been experimenting with that. We were still doing all of our crazy marketing, still doing the shows and all that. But we started experimenting with the earliest days of webinars. They weren't even called webinars back in the day. And the only platform was like GoToMeeting, which at the time was absolutely awful. Half your audience would disconnect, involuntarily throughout the event. But we started experimenting with that. We started producing some live workshops that were a little more commercial in nature, but the premise was there. So we were laying the groundwork for it, thinking it's just one more medium that we could exploit, not with a grand vision, but because of the 2x4 moment and the fact that we had some experience. I'm like, okay, we're just going to switch to that. And I don't think I had a real awareness that it would all be non-commercial. I think we thought, okay, there's a different venue we can do. We're just going to switch to that. And it seems to be working kind of. So maybe if we just throw all our energy into that, we can make it work. And when we were experimenting with it, it was mostly non-commercial. We kind of followed that. If you want to sell more products, stop talking about your product moment. But I don't think it was conscious. I think it was subconscious. It was there. But I don't think I was aware that we were following that advice. We just happened to be doing it. And so that made it easy. That made it, we had a place to go. We had an alternative. It just wasn't fully exploited yet or developed, but the framework for it was there. We'd already proven that we had the capability of doing it, and we just needed to scale it. And that's exactly what we did quite rapidly.
So once you started stopping talking about yourself, you started to see your business grow and scale because you started focusing on adding value first instead of just making it about the attention.
Yeah, the ROI on that effort was spectacular. And it was spectacular for two reasons. One, because the cost to be authentic, the cost to create content is very low compared to the cost of renting a $70,000 waterfall for 3 days. A large show would cost us easily $175,000 for 3 days of show. By the time you get the booth space and all the drayage and the union labor and, all the stuff, shipping, all of that. The cost to do a webinar is $20 or whatever the subscription fee is for the platform. The cost to speak at a conference is how much is the hotel and the airfare, and the car rental. A fraction of what we were spending. No ad contracts, it's a fraction. When you contribute an article to a trade magazine, they run it. If you want to put an ad in that magazine, you have to buy it. You don't buy an article. They want your expert advice. So there was very little monetary costs. I mean, there was a lot of time, sweat equity, and IP, knowledge. But so the ROI was amazing. A, because we didn't have much of a financial investment, and B, the return was market share and revenue and a higher quality customer. And the fact that when we talked, not instantly, but when we got to the point where when we had something to say, people would listen. And when I started speaking at events, I would draw more people than maybe other speakers. Not because I'm a better speaker at all, only because I was known. People knew who I was. And that level of, I hate to say notoriety, because I don't mean it in the context most people would say that word in. But the fact that, you're known by the industry and respected, not some person just trying to hawk a product, but a person who's providing answers to highly technical problems that are accurate without asking for something in return, puts you in a category of trusted thought leaders. And that's what I managed to build. I don't think I was intending for that as the outcome. And if I was, I don't think I ever thought I would get there, but I thought I would at least try and get there. But that's what happened. So it was a great instant decision to do it. And we already had the basic experience to at least get that started.
Yeah, that's really cool that it ended up working out that way. One of the things you mentioned on your website that drew my attention was you said you guys have a dedication to a core value that reliability matters. How did that come about?
Not in quite a noble way as one would think. I have the unique ability to clear a cocktail party, to just get everyone to move out of my way. And that happens when someone comes up to me and goes, so maybe I'm wearing a name badge. Mike, what do you do for a living? I build cleaning machines for circuit boards to remove residual post-reflow contamination to avoid failures created by electrochemical migration-induced inverted growth and parasitic electrical leakage. No one is in the room. It's like a Star Trek, beam me off the bridge, Scotty, right? They're gone, right? I can totally clear a room. So it became very apparent very quickly that I need a better stick. I need a better answer because A, they don't really care. It's just one of those stupid guy questions. Guys ask each other that all the time. Women don't seem to do that.
What do you do?
What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? Right. It's some peacock thing. They're just, putting the feathers out. But anyway, so I started to think about, well, what do we do? Yeah, we build equipment that cleans circuit boards. Yeah, but what do you do? That's how you do it. But what do you actually do? We make electronics more reliable. That's what we do. Well, how do you do that? We have machines that remove the contamination that would otherwise cause the boards to fail. So what do you do, Mike? We don't build cleaning machines. What do you do, Mike? We're in the reliability business. We make everything what do you mean by that? We make everything you use. That phone in your back pocket, the microwave oven, your television, your computer, your grandfather's pacemaker, the guidance systems on the airplanes that you fly, the cruise control and the infotainment system in your car. We make sure that when you turn them on, they work. You're welcome. That's usually what I'll say. And I said, and they're now fascinated, or at least more fascinated by their reaction will be like, oh my God, that's interesting. Tell me more.
Yeah.
Where before I could clear a room.
Yes.
Right. So that's what we do. We make stuff you use every day reliable.
And in that core value, were there other core values that you guys came up with within your company as a way to really unite your team around what you did and why it mattered?
We're on a mission. I strongly believe that the business needs to be greater than the sum of its parts. I think that, we build cleaners. Okay. Why? Well, because there's an economic force. We build them for this much. We sell them for that much. We make profit. Okay. That's commerce, right? Why are we in business? Well, we're in business to make electronics more reliable. Okay. Why? Because we want to make the world a better place. And that sounds so grandiose and almost Pollyannish. But I do think that purpose-driven businesses, and I don't necessarily mean feeding orphans, drilling wells in Africa, all the really good service-related, soup kitchen people, the people who are doing good for humanity. I think you can do good for humanity in the nerdiest business possible when you just look beyond the business. So we are on a mission as a company to make the world a better place. And we do that by making electronic products more reliable. And that's more important today than any other time in our history because electronics are ubiquitous today. And with IoT, Internet of Things, wearables, implantables, all the stuff we're seeing with AI and all that, for better or for worse, it's impactful on the world. And we're part of that, making sure it actually works. And we're also exceptionally green. The technology that we invented to avoid the use of those offending chemicals turns out is exceptionally green. It's the greenest technology possible to get the same outcome. And that wasn't necessarily the mission in the earliest days. The mission was, what can we use that works? And it turned out what we use that works is exceptionally green. So, and the way we do it compared to the way other companies do it, we save hundreds of thousands of gallons of water. Each customer saves hundreds of thousands of gallons of water when they use our process versus a competitive process. As a company, our technology has managed to save tens of millions of gallons of water annually from A, being consumed, and B, going down the drain, having to be treated. The energy costs associated with making the water, usable, and then treating it when it goes into the waste stream is enormous. So we have all these knock-on impacts. So we say water, it's a very green process. We have a smaller, for those that think that's important, carbon footprint, because the utilities required to run our equipment are a fraction of alternate ways to do it. And we make everything work better. So that is really our mission. And that's what we promote internally and externally, but mostly internally, that, we're on a mission to make the world a better place. And here's how we do it. And that works for us. And that works for me. And that works for our team. Our team kind of digs that mantra. They like to be part of something bigger than just the company, bigger than themselves. And they feel connected to that mission and making things work and making the world a better place. And it sounds simplistic, but it works for us.
Well, it makes sense, because why would we want to spend our time doing things that we don't think really matters?
Right. And we're a small company. We've always been, from a footprint standpoint, from a people standpoint, we're a relatively small company. There are about 35 employees or so. And it's easy when you're in a small company environment to not really see a bigger picture. So we have a meeting every week when we let people know that, when we get an order from a company, call it Acme Corporation. Acme Corporation orders a machine. And we have a meeting and we post on the bulletin board a bio of what Acme Corporation builds, their place in the world. Acme Corporation builds defibrillators for infants in the ICU. They save lives. They impact the world this way. We are helping them save lives. So we connect our team with a higher purpose. So the person whose job it is to put widgets in boxes and ship them. If someone asks them, what do you do for a living? I'm a shipping manager. Okay. What do you do for a living? I work for a company that that sells things like, makes it possible to make defibrillators for pediatric ICU patients. Oh my God. Yeah, I'll buy you a drink. All of a sudden it's a higher level. And we don't want anyone of our team whose job it is to weld a frame or wire connectors together to think that's what they do. That's what they make the world a better place by doing that in that order. And I don't know if that lands with every one of our team members. Maybe it doesn't. I kind of think it does. And one of the reasons I kind of think it does was during COVID. I'm in California. We were the first state to officially shut down. And the next day after our governor announced we're shutting down, we received emails from Department of Defense. And I'm paraphrasing. They worded it quite legally, but what it really said was, don't even think of shutting down. We need you. You're essential. And it turned out we do a lot of business with defense contractors that are part of the DoD sphere of influence. So because we were their vendor, they sent these what are called downflow letters. So it downflowed to their vendors. They wanted to make sure that the defense manufacturing ecosystem stayed running for obvious reasons. So we had now permission legally to stay open. So great. So we had an all hands meeting with our team the next morning. And now keep in mind, we were told we were going to shut down for 6 weeks. After 6 weeks, there'll be no more COVID. We'll kill it. Yeah. Try that again next time and see if anyone believes you. But so we thought, okay, it's going to be 6 weeks. We can survive. Economically, we can survive that. So we had a meeting with our team and we said, look, okay, California ordered everyone to shut down, but we've got this exemption. Here it is. And we're showing in the paper. And that means we're allowed to be here. The industry needs us. Certainly the defense industry needs us, but all industries kind of need us. We have customers that we've already agreed to build equipment for. We already have purchase orders in place. We're in the middle of production and we're allowed to stay open. But we understand it's a scary time. So here's the deal. If you don't feel comfortable coming to work, please stay home. We will pay you. It will not come out of PTO. We will pay you. Now keep in mind, we were thinking 6 weeks. We'll pay you for the entire time. Please don't come in and there'll be no negative repercussions at all. We get it. It's a crazy time. But if you do want to come to work, we need you. The industry needs you. And people need you. Not one person stayed home, even though they had the opportunity to get paid to stay home. Not one person stayed home. They all came. And that was due to two things. Potentially. One was they were fulfilled in their job and they had a good view of the mission of our company, particularly in those times, or they had no desire to spend extra time with their spouse and said, no, I'll come to work. It's a better choice. Maybe a little bit of both. But to me, that was the first real solid piece of evidence that people were connected to something bigger. Because otherwise, I think we would have lost half our team. Oh, yeah. I'll take the ticket home. Yeah.
Absolutely. Nothing like a storm to test the true character of a person and a business of like, do you have something that withstands the trial, the adversity that comes at you? And then also what a testament to you, not just you personally, but your company and your leadership to then be like, okay, how can we protect this, honor this, not let this go? Was that a humbling or eye-opening moment for you to see your team respond like that?
Yeah. It was a combination of humbling, blessed, relief. That whole few days was just a lot of stress because it went from our Governor Gavin Newsom saying, if you're not on this short list, you're shutting down and we're going to enforce it. To, okay, stress level goes up. To, oh, we can receive this email. We can stay open. Okay, stress level goes down. Are we going to get staff to come in? Stress level goes up. Staff says they're coming. Stress level goes down. Will our customers continue to buy? Because most of them are shut down. Stress level goes up. So it was a roller coaster. It was a Six Flags high quality roller coaster during the first several weeks of COVID. Then it kind of smoothed out a little bit, but the unknown is scary. People don't like unknown. Businesses don't like unknown. And unknown, it's like, driving a car at night with no lights. You just don't know what you're about to hit, if anything. So that was a pretty stressful time, but it all worked out good. Our business thankfully didn't suffer. We stayed busy. Some of our customers who were building one product started building defibrillators or those breathing machines.
Yeah.
Ventilators. And repurposed into medical. So there was still enough business. Our industry, the electronics manufacturing industry, I think, survived. Maybe not unscathed, but relatively unscathed.
Mm-hmm. So at some point along this journey, you ended up starting your podcast for the electronics manufacturing industry of Reliability Matters. But then you also ended up starting your Reluctant Entrepreneur podcast as well. What was your motivation for doing that?
Well, as you can tell from our conversation, I have no problem, talking. I have a problem to stop talking. The motivation for Reliability Matters was really just to continue the conversation of reliability. I mean, it became very apparent that we're in the reliability business, not just the cleaning business. And I thought talking to subject matter experts, building an audience, which is really what I was trying to do. I was trying to build a larger audience than just people interested in cleaning, because that's a very sub audience.
Yeah.
And now I want to talk to people who are just part of our ecosystem and what's important to them, because it's all about reliability at the end of the day. So that was the motivation. And when I decided to do that podcast, I thought, I'd never done this medium before. We played with trade shows. We played with print ads. We played with digital ads. We've done webinars. We've done workshops. Let's try this podcast thing, right? And I had listened to podcasts up to that point, but I'm like, I think I can do that. And I thought, you know what? I'll commit to 10 episodes, because after 10, there'll be nothing more to talk about. We would have talked about everything. We would have solved every problem in our industry.
In 10 episodes.
Well, that was over 200 episodes ago, right? So, but I thought we would do 10, and it was a rabbit hole. It was just like quicksand. It just sucked me in. And you know what that's like, Amy.
Yeah, I do.
You're living it now. And so that was that. And then I started, as I was doing more and more public speaking on the subject of reliability and cleaning in many cases, I got an invitation. My worlds collided. My entrepreneurial world and my technology world collided. I was at a conference in Hawaii, and I met a professor who was speaking there, and we had breakfast together. And during the course of breakfast, he asked, what do you, how'd you start the company? I've known your company for years, but is it yours? I'm like, yeah, tell me the story. So I, gave him the story. And he says, I want you to come to my university and speak to my engineering students. They need to hear this. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, where do you teach? Dartmouth.
Okay.
I am a college dropout, Amy. I went for college for 6 weeks, and I'm like, I'm out of here, right? I can't stand it. And I don't think he realized what he was asking. This college dropout guy is going to go to an Ivy League university and speak to students. Well, I've done that now for nine consecutive years. And now I speak at other universities as well on the subject of entrepreneurship. It's funny how worlds collide. But as I started speaking, mostly in the EDU world, the educational world, to college students, I started talking to other entrepreneurs. And I realized that we all tell very similar stories, yet we all think our stories are unique. And they're unique in certain ways, but the base underneath that uniqueness is a very common thread. And, my business is 34 years old now, so I've kind of graduated to kind of founder status, which means they pay me to stay away. But there was a time when I was really hard on myself because I made a lot of bonehead business mistakes. I almost killed the company multiple times. And I would look at myself and criticize, like, I thought I was a smart guy. I'm more stupid than I thought. I'm almost embarrassed to tell the story. And I start talking to other entrepreneurs, and they're like, oh my God, you too? And they made the same mistakes. The examples were a little different, but they made the same basic mistakes. Causation was identical. And then I started talking to more entrepreneurs. And I'm like, I could write their book for them. And I started looking at entrepreneurship in retrospect as curriculum. When you start a business, particularly the first time, you basically signed up for a university course. Only rather than Dartmouth or Yale or Harvard or, all the others, instead of a brick and mortar building, instead of frat parties and sorority girls, it's a perpetual school of learning. Mm-hmm. And there's no graduation date. There's no diploma. It just goes on and on and on. And you learn so much, but, if you stay with it. And that's kind of the view I have now of entrepreneurship. And I decided to start the podcast, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, with two primary goals, kind of audacious goals. The first goal is to de-romanticize entrepreneurship, not to discourage the general public from entering on, far from that, but to give an authentic view of what it's really like. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this, maybe you too, Amy. Mike, you're so lucky. You work for yourself. I wish I could work for myself. You get to write yourself your own checks. You get to take as much time off as you want. You can buy things and charge it to the company. I wish I had that. None of that is true. Not in the early days anyway. None of that is true. Everything is our boss. Everyone is our boss. We are the bottom of the food chain in terms of who we report to. So I think people who are about to give up a perfectly good job because they envy what they perceive to be the life of an entrepreneur, stay signing the back of the check. Stay on that side of the check because you're just going to fail. But for those who are really thinking about it, I want them to hear how hard it's going to be and how rewarding it's going to be. They come hand in hand. It's like raising a child. It's hard. It's easy. It's painful. It's joyful. It's all those things. But you're going to go through that emotional one. Just be prepared. And the other hope for the show is that if someone is doing this entrepreneur thing, and they're in the hedge maze of business and they can't see the way out, they might be ready right this second to throw in the towel and say, I'm out. Just pull me out of this hedge maze. They may not realize that they are 2 lefts and a right turn away from where they need to be. They're so close. They just can't see it. They're too deep into the maze. And one of the goals of the show was maybe someone who is in that position to hear from someone who was in that position and maybe get a little bit more inspiration to just keep going. Because if I had quit every time I hit a wall that I thought there was no way around, you and I would be having a different conversation today, if any conversation. And the fact that my dogged persistence, my determination, my stubbornness, my will would not let me fail, really allowed the time to finish that part of the curriculum, to go on to the next curriculum. And you just got to stay with it and just don't let anything get in your way or anyone get in your way. You just have to stick with it. And I think that's why and where a lot of people fail. Because they just run out of steam. They run out of grit and determination. They doubt themselves. And what they don't realize is that's just part of the building process. It's like boot camp. You go to join the army, they put you in boot camp. The first thing they do is break you so they can rebuild you into the soldier you need to be. And I think the business gods and the business professor gods that are running this school of perpetual learning have the same philosophy. They're going to break you and rebuild you into the person you need to be for your business. And it's a long, arduous, sometimes painful, always beneficial process that you got to go through.
Do you feel like that message is openly talked about to the extent of what's real? I have heard a lot of entrepreneurs allude to their hard times, but we kind of gloss over it, it just happened this one time and it was just this hard season, but then I got it all figured out and now it's all good. Do you feel like that the message that's out there is a little bit misleading regarding entrepreneurship?
Yeah. One of the things I had to do, I mentioned earlier, the attributes I started the company with, bravado, ego, arrogance, naivety, first estimate of risk. Ego, God love my ego buddy. My ego buddy was my bodyguard. My ego told me I could do things I didn't think I could do. Love my ego. But at one point I had to take the little buddy and put him in the dungeon and lock him up. Take him out to play once in a while when no one's around. But I had to kind of isolate him. And I think that when I hear some business owners talk about their story, they'll throw a couple of critical moments in there. But sometimes I think the purpose is to show how they overcame it. Right. And I'm thinking their ego is not in the same dungeon my ego is in. And okay, that's them. You do you. But when I decided to tell my story, I wanted to be as authentic as I possibly could. In fact, when my wife read the book, she was a little bit critical. She goes, "Aren't you embarrassed by some of this stuff?" And I'm like, yes, I am embarrassed about some of this stuff. but so are the people who are in the process that are experiencing the same stuff. And I want them to know they're not alone. And pretty much everyone they look up to had their stuff as well. At one point, Amy, before the internet, there was no email, we had to mail brochures to people. At one point, my postage meter was out of postage. The minimum postage I could add to it when I took it to the post office to refill it was $50. I didn't have $50. So I scoured through office garbage cans looking for envelopes that we had received where the post office didn't stamp the cancel mark over the stamp. I would cut out the stamps and tape them to envelopes so I could mail brochures. Right. Is that a proud moment? No, it is not a proud moment. It's a sad, desperate moment. But I don't mind telling that story because it illustrates the persistence, the determination, the I'm not going to fail, I can't fail, we're just going to march forward attitude that is going to be required from time to time. Not the whole time. It's the whole time you're doing something wrong. But you're going to have to go through those moments. And my hope is maybe people who hear stories like that might not wait for the building to be on fire before they leap into something better. Maybe they can recognize the sign based on stories I tell, all my guests tell. Like, oh my God, wow, that hits home. What did he do? What did she do? And maybe they can recalibrate and change direction without waiting for having to scour through garbage cans for unused stamps, or whatever. So that's what I want to see. So I don't mind sharing all my bonehead, stupid, ill-conceived ideas and mistakes that I made because I think they're the poster child of what can go wrong. And they're also evidence that no matter how much you mess things up, it can be fixed. One of the things my mentor told me was that when she would come in and help go through the company's stuff and figure out what's wrong, and I was embarrassed when she would find stuff and go through our numbers and think, oh, I'm not proud of these numbers. And she looked at me at one point and she goes, Mike, this is good news. What part of these numbers are good news? And she said, if we can see it, we can fix it. And today we can see it. And I just felt this relief. I was so nervous about putting everything on display because it wasn't pretty. And she goes, no, this is great news. If we can see it, we can fix it. So hopefully through what you're doing, what I'm doing, what others in this space are doing, we can shine light and allow them to see it. And maybe they can fix it before it really damages the company or themselves.
Really appreciate your willingness to have that level of authenticity because I know, especially for me, walking my own entrepreneur journey, there have been all kinds of times of failure and shame and isolation and this wondering of what's wrong with me? Like everybody else has this figured out and clearly I don't, and I don't have what it takes, I feel like it's the mental battle that is the hardest battle that we face outside of the lead gen and the customers and the systems and all the things, So knowing that there are other entrepreneurs out there who've lived this and walked this and are willing to share it, that is super encouraging.
Yeah, I think we just have to learn to get out of our own way. We are our own obstacle, and because we don't want to be wrong, we're attached to an idea, we're attached to an outcome. We will get this outcome, and maybe we're not meant to get that outcome. So we are attached to too many things, and I think we have to learn how to, cut the strings of attachment and get out of our own way. I think that is the number one action that I've taken that has helped turn my company around. Just get out of my own way. I'm the reason, I'm the obstacle every single time. Yeah, we can say, well, it's the economy, it's the pandemic, it's this or it's that. Yeah, okay, those are contributing factors, but the real obstacle is me. And I think once we come to terms with that, which requires your ego buddy to be isolated, otherwise the ego will do its job. That it's done very well, which is to tell you, you don't need to hear this advice. You're not the problem. Problem is everything else. you need to kind of separate yourself from that. And once you do, and you have an honest perspective of yourself, I used to be the smartest guy in the room, only because I couldn't afford smart people when we first got into the company. So it was easy for me to be the smartest guy in the room. My goal now is to be the stupidest guy in the room, because I think I'm pretty bright technically. And if I'm the stupidest person in the room, we can't fail. We cannot fail. And I think business owners we talk about scaling the business a lot. Always talking about scaling the business. I think we need to scale ourselves to the appropriate scale and needs of the business. And 80% of all businesses fail. Statistically, U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, 80% of all businesses that start up fail. Is that because business is inherently risky? No. It's because 100% of the owners of the 80% of the businesses that failed the business. The business did not fail them. They failed the business. And I think they failed the business because they thought what got them from A to B, in my case, bravado, arrogance, ego, naivety, what got me from A to B would get me from B to C. And in every instance that I've seen, and I've talked to hundreds of entrepreneurs, what got you from A to B fails you from B to C. You have to adapt. You have to scale. And what you can't learn, you acquire through hiring or consulting or whatever. You have to be surrounded with the skills required for the appropriate size and scale of the business. And you can't rely on what used to work, because the business gods have a twisted sense of humor. It's like you're playing a video game, and the next level, all the rules change. You got to learn those new rules. The business doesn't need that anymore. It's like when you're raising a baby. They start on milk and, or formula, and then they go to baby food, and then they start to get teeth, and, same thing all the way through life to the time you're very, very old. Your dietary needs change. And I think the same is true with the business. The business needs to be fed an appropriate diet of leadership, and its needs change as the business gets older. And if the founder and the team don't recognize that, then they drive the business to the point of failure. They fail the business. The business doesn't fail them.
I think that's very well worded and very insightful. And I really appreciate everything that you have been willing to share about your own story and failures and the lessons you've learned along the way over this conversation. So any final concluding thoughts for today?
Well, first of all, thank you for the work you are doing. You are part of the process of shedding light on this weird world of entrepreneurship. And thanks for doing what you do. Thanks for making the entrepreneurial world a better place by talking about it and encouraging your guests to share their journeys. I think it's a valuable resource. And, 34 years ago, there were no podcasts, so
Yeah.
Obviously I couldn't gain that insight, but I think your efforts of those that do podcasts like this are really helping the community of entrepreneurs. So thank you for doing that. Last bit of advice, two things. I'll steal one 2-word quote from Steve Jobs, and then I'll just add my own to it. My own would just be, never give up. Just keep moving forward. And to quote Steve Jobs, stay curious. Stay curious. That just sounds kind of too simple, almost Hallmark card. But curiosity is what allowed me to do what I do. Why? How do things work? I used to get in all this trouble because I would take all my parents' appliances apart to figure out how they work. And that didn't get me in trouble. What got me in trouble was I didn't really have the motivation to put everything back when I got it. But that insatiable curiosity to how things work, that started off to be a technical curiosity that morphed into how does everything work? How do decisions get made? How does doing this result in that? That allowed me to look at things that are a little bit nutty. Want to sell more products? Stop talking about your product. Like, why does that make sense? Why it doesn't make sense? Why doesn't it make sense? What would need to happen for it to make sense? That curiosity allows me to consider possibilities that I would normally reject earlier. So yeah, stay curious and just never give up. You are closer than you think to getting to the other side of the mountain, way closer than you think. And you're just short of the summit. Don't give up now.
Yeah, that's good. That's so good. I needed to hear that. Thank you.
Good.
All right. So you can connect more with Mike at his website, mikekonrad.com. I'll link that in the show notes.
Konrad with a K. Yeah, thanks, Dad. Yeah, Konrad with a K. But yeah, mikekonrad.com. And from there, all my other sorted activities are linked in there. So it's a good portal.
And then, and his 2 podcasts that he has out, Reliability Matters and The Reluctant Entrepreneur. So I'll link those below. And that is all for this episode. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, Amy.